you start listening to the heart and being guided by the heart, it's like, a wisdom that's beyond the thinking mind. It doesn't necessarily make sense. And so I feel like you're guided by what you love. You're guided by what makes you feel good. You're guided by what lights up your heart. You want to start doing more things that make you feel good.
Welcome to Soul-Led Creative Women, a podcast for creatively curious women seeking rich, soul-led ways to look after themselves better. I'm Sam Horton, and in this episode, I'm talking with Fiona Black. We talk about the spiritual journey, the power of motherhood as an opportunity to walk a path of awakening and healing, and of course, how to better nourish and honour the creativity in our souls. So today I have Fiona Black with me. Fiona is a gifted intuitive, healer, channel, and priestess of the light. She has been walking the path of healing and awakening for over 20 years. An old soul, Fiona has always worked in the healing arts and has been successfully self-employed for all of those 20 years. She currently lives a quiet life on magical Vancouver Island, her words, with her husband and daughters. So welcome, Fiona.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me today.
So today we're going to be talking about all things creativity, awakening, and motherhood. So to get us started, I'll just ask you, your business presence is beautifully called Freedom with Fiona online. What does freedom mean to you personally and for the women you serve?
Great question. So freedom is one of my highest values. And for me, freedom is this freedom to choose. Freedom to choose to be who you truly are and to do what you really came here to do. I believe that so many of us, are conditioned and programmed to believe and be limited by, what society tells us is possible and about who we truly are. And I feel like one of my missions or purposes is to really support individuals to really see who they are, feel who they are, and liberate themselves to not only be that, but to do that out there in the world, if that makes sense. And so, time freedom, financial freedom, relationship freedom, emotional freedom, mental freedom, truly free from the highest possible sense.
And so is part of that concept of freedom, is that the realization that we actually have everything already within ourselves to make those choices and to create that freedom for ourselves?
Yeah, that's really the key to it all. It's going from looking outside of ourselves to going inwards and finding that we're really the only ones that can save ourselves. It's only us and our choices and how we feel and what we think that liberates us to really step into our dreams or step into who we truly came here to be. So it very much is an internal process, a process of going from looking outward to going inward.
I recently was writing something and I came up with, if we don't take the time to really know ourselves, then no one will really know us.
That's quite profound, isn't it? It's so true.
Mm.
It's so true. Because we forget, don't we? I feel like we come in with this knowing, with this curiosity and excitement and freedom. And then that kind of gradually gets encroached with, what our parents might say and then what teachers might say and then what society says. And we kind of gradually conform, do what we think we should do and end up not really knowing who we truly are and what we truly love.
So the work you do is very spiritually focused. What do you believe are the common catalysts for women embarking on a path of spiritual healing and awakening?
Yeah, I think there's really two main catalysts, and one being an internal catalyst and one being an external. The internal catalyst is where something inside of you begins to shift and change. It might be a feeling of like restlessness or an anxiousness even, or a questioning. Do I really want to do this? Is this really what I want to do? And I think that internal catalyst is kind of divinely guided. I don't know whether, everybody is awakening. The planet is awakening. And I think we all kind of awaken in our own beautiful divine timing. So there's that internal sense and feeling of discord, of dis-ease. And then I think sometimes for people, it's something external happens. They may lose their job, they may get sick or lose a loved one or go through divorce. And the external catalyst really causes that person to question everything, question the very ground of their being, who they are, where they think their life is going to go, like the direction of their life. All of a sudden, everything might just change. Yeah.
And so I'm assuming that for some women, like they don't even really know that they've started on this journey. So what would you describe the key milestones for women as this path unfolds?
Yeah, that's a really great question too. I think they begin with, there's that kind of blissful ignorance. You're not aware. You're just kind of doing what you do until that internal or external thing kind of triggers you. And then you become aware, like you become consciously aware of, oh, I'm not happy, or this needs to change, or something is different. And you really begin to question things. You question your truth. You question if you're happy. You just begin to kind of look a little bit deeper under the hood. And you might even go outside and question society and what's happening out there, and again, so you may be internally triggered or externally triggered into awakening by something that's happening outside of you. And then so this questioning happens, and then you begin to explore, well, who am I? I mean, I think that's the biggest question, isn't it? Who am I? And you begin to maybe look at healing modalities and reading books, and you begin seeking this question out there, who am I? And I think you can get to a point in that external seeking where eventually you just get really frustrated. You just get really I'm on my knees. I'm not finding what I'm looking for. No one out there is doing this for me. No one is showing me who I truly am. And you kind of surrender. Yeah, those on your knees. And I think sometimes, depending on how much willpower you have or how resistant you are to letting go, sometimes you have to be brought to your knees many times. You might get extremely frustrated or go into depression even. And something happens in that. I think something happens when you're on your knees and you just give up. You just put it all down. You stop seeking and you just give up completely. It's like something cracks open, and that's when the light comes in. That saying, the cracks are how the light gets in. And that happens by grace. Again, I think there's a divine timing to that. Everybody's life is different. And then once that light comes in, I always see it as like you're left in this cave and you've been looking outside and trying to find the exit and trying to get out and trying to find who you are, to find the light, but you kind of give up looking for the exit and you have to go inwards, and you realize there's this little burning ember of light inside of you, and you begin to follow that light and listen to that light, be guided by your intuition, really listening. And your outside life may look exactly the same, but something shifted inside of you. Your compass of where you've placed your power has shifted. All of a sudden, there's an awareness, oh, the power I think is inside of me. It's my choice, how I perceive the situation that I'm in. I get to choose how I think and feel about this. And I think as soon as that happens, that's when the work truly begins, actually. That's when you truly begin to understand who you are and begin, navigating. Some people talk about it as when you begin to open the heart and lead from the heart and intuition. It's like walking around blindfold,
Mm.
before you thought you knew and you thought you saw the path. And then when you have this awakening and you go inwards, it's like you're walking around blindfold, trusting your intuition and your inner guidance and not necessarily knowing where you're going, beginning to trust yourself in the process.
So for me, that process of really realizing that, the answers were within me and everything that I was looking for was kind of within me. For me, that was really very much aligned with my creative practice and specifically, my art practice. And I think I really needed that to be able to get quiet enough to really hear myself and hear that inner intuition and that inner power and that inner wisdom. So I can appreciate that not everyone is setting out to paint and draw and all those sorts of things, even though I think anyone can do that and the artist label is unhelpful. What does it look like for different people then? You know, how did other people get still enough to hear that inner voice?
I think it's really very unique and individual to the person. When you start listening to the heart and being guided by the heart, it's like, a wisdom that's beyond the thinking mind. It doesn't necessarily make sense. And so I feel like you're guided by what you love. You're guided by what makes you feel good. You're guided by what lights up your heart. You want to start doing more things that make you feel good. And so for some people, they might remember all of a sudden, once they've slowed down enough, that they actually love taking their time when they cook and making it look beautiful, or they love to dance, or they love to just take long walks in the forest, and they actually start giving themselves the time to do these things that they love. Whereas before, it wasn't important. It was the last thing on the to-do list, but now it becomes the first thing on the to-do list because creativity is life force energy. It like literally builds us up. Yeah.
So it is creativity then really that unlocks this for us. This is the missing puzzle piece, in terms of being able to hear ourselves in this way. What would you say to that statement?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it connects to opening up. Creativity uses a different part of the brain, right? It uses more of that right side of the brain. And so I feel like there's a deeper connection with the heart and the right side of the brain and intuition. So, I don't know the science behind it, but that would completely make sense. Yeah.
And I suppose part of it's as well getting out of that masculine doing energy and leaning into the feminine creative side as part of that process for people, we're trained to live in that masculine energy, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Activities trained out of us almost, isn't it? It's not honored. It's not really honored and revered. The left brain achievement, the doing, the getting is honored, and creativity is so receptive, isn't it? It's like being open and listening. It's the very opposite. So we begin to cultivate a side of ourselves. And I actually talk about it as remembering. You're remembering ways of being what you love that have always been inside of you, just haven't had the spaciousness to listen.
So flipping over a little bit to motherhood. The journey of motherhood is a complex and life-changing one. So how can women approach this role with more grace and ease?
Oof. I would say, I'm just going to get real with you that, my biggest awakening was through the birth of my first child. And I was really kind of in dark night of the soul stuff in the first 2, 3, 4, 5, even 5 years of my eldest daughter. She's coming up 14 now. I have another daughter who's coming up 8. And I was really hard on myself. I definitely didn't feel grace, and it definitely didn't feel easy. In fact, it felt like the toughest time that I'd ever experienced, especially as an empath with a highly expressive and powerful and creative child in front of me who was being and doing all the things that I had been trained and conditioned little girls shouldn't do, like have tantrums and be highly expressive and extremely powerful. And so, you know, she brought me to my knees a few times, and my mum used to call her, or yeah, she still is, call her a force of nature. It's like, whether in a good mood, amazing, in a bad mood, like hold on to your hats, like just so expressive. And so, yeah, ease and grace definitely was not my experience. She was the one that shook me awake, made me question all my beliefs about who children are, how they should behave, all my old English conditioning, children should be seen and not heard. And I didn't believe that, but I could feel it all coming out. And so, yeah, it was a really powerful and profound time for me. And I took it all very personally. I took her tantrums personally. I thought maybe I was being a bad mum or what I was doing wasn't correct. And then when I was trying to handle the tantrum, which I didn't know how to even handle because I'd never even seen this kind of behavior anymore, I would be like, oh, no, I'm doing this wrong and I'm a bad mom, all of those thoughts. And so I was very triggered and I took it very personally. And what I've learned is that I'm still learning, right? We learn all the time. It's a continuous process, is that the trigger isn't an obstacle to get over. It's not something that's there to cause separation, essentially, although it feels like it. The trigger is a portal to deeper connection, to deeper understanding about who I am, to deeper understanding about who she is. Actually, triggers are portals to truth, divine truth, like what I would call a truth that just is, right? And what we do, or what we're doing with these powerful conscious beings that are coming through, is that they won't stand for the illusion. Do you know what I mean? They won't stand for it because they're really quite centered and powered in truth and the divine still. And so any conditioning, any old belief systems that we have, they want to come and rattle them and release them. So how to navigate with more grace and ease? I would say it's challenging, but don't take it personally. Stand back and be the observer. And remember that the trigger is a portal for deeper connection and deeper truth. And that it's going to look messy. Emotions are messy. And I think we're taught that humans shouldn't really express the messiness, But I think that the more divine we are, the more connected we are to truth, the more messy we allow our human to be, because that's truth, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we are inherently messy, I think, in life and always. Yeah, I can relate to how you described your own motherhood journey a lot. My daughter is 12 and I'm only just really coming to terms with how to hold my own and hold my own space and energy when she's having one of her wild moments. So I can really appreciate that sentiment. Moving away from motherhood slightly then, and going back to creativity, which we briefly touched on before, how do you see creativity fitting into our soul's essence and truth?
I think creativity is the core of our soul, essence, and truth. We are creative beings, we birth children, we birth worlds, and we're constantly creating our world through our choices. And so I don't see it as separate. I feel that to be in connection with our divine essence or divine source is to be creative. That's what it is. That truly presence in our truth is constantly creative. And I think that, there's never a time that we're not creating. But before awakening or before becoming kind of open and aware, we're unconsciously creating. Maybe we keep creating what we don't want. We keep just creating more and more of that. And then we go through this awakening stage and we kind of allow ourselves to listen to our heart's desires, and we allow ourselves to listen to our truth. And then we begin steering the ship, whereas the ship is being steered by, no, you're unconscious before, but now you're actually steering the ship, and you can begin to use creativity to align to create what you truly desire. And if creativity is our life force energy, then creating what you desire gives us more life force energy. It fills us up, it lights us up.
And how do you think that sort of that creativity, how do you think that that looks for our children, in terms of we seem to have lost touch with our creativity as we entered adulthood? Are they going to have that same experience, or, do you think it's going to be an easier shift for them to have this sort of intellectual concept that creativity is just as important as that masculine sort of doing energy and all of that goal setting that we're trained to have in the education system?
Well, I think we, as the mothers who are open and are doing this work, who are doing the transformational work, we're going to create the space where we keep creativity alive for them. We have such a different mindset to even our parents' generation. And I think that things are changing. Even schooling is changing. There's so many different ways we can school now: nature schools, art schools, online schooling, unschooling. I just think that we as the parent to these incredibly conscious, amazing children are going to co-create with them a way for them to keep creativity alive.
Mhm.
And that it's going to be a two-way thing, right? The more we allow, the more we give them space to be who they are, which is inherently creative, without trying to make them be someone or follow a certain line, if you see what I mean, follow a certain schooling. The more we allow them freedom and spaciousness to be who they are, I think the more we allow ourselves to be the freedom to be who we are, and vice versa. So it's a co-creative product, a co-creative process with these
Mm.
currently wise conscious beings.
Mm. And so for you then, how does creativity show up for you in your own work?
The more I have trusted in this heart and in this intuition, the more I have trusted myself to know myself, the more creativity has led me. So I would say my whole business is through creative energy. I channel. I prepare a lot less than I used to. I really trust in the moment of information coming through, and that in this present moment, we get to create without so much preparation. Whereas before, I would think I would want to prepare a lot more. So, yeah, so I do a channel, and my sessions are way more open and organic. I do pre prepare social media stuff. I do like to channel it. And I also really like it posting when I'm inspired, even offering courses or other things when I'm inspired, and not consciously not spending too long trying to prepare them and just getting them out. Yeah, my courses are channeled. Yeah, so I use it a lot, actually. I use my feminine energy a lot in my business.
And so leaving work to the side for a second, how then has creativity featured in your own empowered wellness story, and part of your spiritual journey as well?
Yeah. So for me, my creativity, like my main form of creativity is words. It's channeled as information, as poems. And I find that I am most inspired and get most, call them downloads, channeled information when I'm out in the forest. And so when I'm working in the forest, usually alone, it's a bit tricky when I'm with my kids. Out in nature, that's when I receive the most inspired ideas. And so making that a priority. So making my creative time, which might be working in the forest or it might be writing a channel post, making it a priority, because that is essentially what fills me up. That is what gives me energy. And if I don't do it, if I do too much doing, and let's face it, being a mom and I single parent quite a few months of the year too, is full of so much doing. We think it's a nurturing, feminine energy, but it's all flipping doing. There's so much doing in it. And then if you run your business too, there's a lot of doing in that. And so for me, really flipping and prioritizing creative time has changed everything in my well-being. It's what really fills me up.
And so in addition to the creative piece then, what else do you do to care for yourself? What does your own self-care and wellness routine look like?
I do love to meditate. I love silence. I love, maybe that's why I like the forest. And so I do wake up and meditate. I used to meditate for long periods of time, but I find I don't need that anymore. And two, I really like short periods of time for things now. It feels really manageable and bite sized. So I meditate for about 10 minutes. I love EFT tapping. I also, so I'll do some EFT tapping first thing in the morning, and then I might do some strength training. So that might be 30 or 40 minutes first thing in the morning. And it feels so good. And I've tried to do a routine for years. And to be honest, in that first 10 years of motherhood, I think that Shavasana or child's pose was about as much as I could do for self care. I was so exhausted. And even if I tried to prioritize it, I was so exhausted for such a long time in those first 10 years. I don't know whether you can relate to this, but I used to feel inside that someone could give me a whole year off and I'd still feel exhausted. And so, and that's exhausted, I think, well, with the doing, but also mental exhaustion.
Mhm.
And something really shifted inside of me when I headed into my 40s. I really began to really wake up out of the cloud of motherhood too, out of the fuzz of breastfeeding and all the younger years. And I was like, no, it's just like the line was drawn, like I need to focus on me now. And so now all the things that I do don't feel like I should, like I'm excited to do them. It feels really good because I found a way, and I'm flexible too. I'm not like I'm not very good to be too routine, but I found a way that feels really good for me, that fills me up first thing before I go out to my day. And then I might do bite-sized things throughout the day. And then definitely to close my day, I will reround my day. I'll fill myself with appreciation and just all the miracles that might happen that day. And then if anything's happened that were a bit crunchy, I kind of rewrite them, like correct them in my memory, or make them how I would have liked to experience them. So
Beautiful. Yeah. It's being careful not to make self-care another to-do list, right? So, let's not create more work for ourselves and our self-care. And for me, one of the things that I've found is just tuning in and asking myself, what do I need right now? And even though it may be something that my mother would roll her eyes at, like running a hot bath in the middle of the day, recent experience. Yeah, why not? This is how we care for ourselves, by asking ourselves, what do we really need?
freedom, right? Freeing yourself from all the shoulds and all of the mental judgments that, hearing our mother's voice in our heads. I have got all to know. And I think we're doing what they couldn't do. Their the consciousness and just the mental ideas of what you can do and what you can't do. We're so much more solid then, and we're liberating and we're freeing ourselves to really listen to ourselves. I had 3 baths in one day.
So for all the women out there who are seeking more freedom and more depth, meaning, and authenticity in their lives, what critical questions would you have them ask themselves today?
Question. I feel like I need to give you a little bit of a prelude before I ask the question. But I think when we begin to understand what it feels like to feel authentic, to feel natural, and that often happens when we're in creative processes, right? Doing something that you love and you're in the flow and you just get lost in that. For me, that's your natural state of being. That's our natural state of being, where the nervous system is relaxed, where we're open, where, we're in flow and we feel good. That's our natural state of being. And for many women, especially, like, that's quite new. Like they might not only just be remembering what that feels like, because we've been caught in what I might call like the illusionary self, which is a story that we've told ourselves about who we are to keep ourselves safe. And that story often feels kind of heavy. We might feel contracted in the body. We might feel burdened. We might feel rushed. We might feel like there's so many things that we need to do. It's coming back to your question and knowing, that really you're either in this state of being or this one. That you're not, there isn't anything in between. You're either being true to yourself or you're not. And so the question would be, am I in my true, authentic state of being right now? Or am I in my illusionary kind of story about who I think I am to keep myself safe? And you'll know the answer by how you feel.
So powerful.
Yeah.
So how can people get to know you better, Fiona, and get a real feel for the work that you are doing?
Great question. You can hop onto my newsletter. I often send out channeled messages or guided meditations and share my offerings with you on the newsletter. And you can do that by going to my website, which is www.freedomwithfiona.com. And there's a sign up for my newsletter on there. I'm on Facebook mostly. I also have an Instagram presence, but Facebook is my main place. And you can find me there as Freedom with Fiona. But you can also connect with my personal Facebook too, Fiona Black, where I think you'll get a real good feel about who I am and what's important to me. And with regards to working with me, I have 2 ways to work with me right now. I have an incredible 21-day package called the Divine Soul Blueprint. And that's for women who are really seeking to understand deeper who they are at a soul level and to really release any, I call them blocks or restrictions that feel like they're getting in the way of them living their fullest expression of who they are. And I absolutely love this package. It works with the Akashic Records, so really deep soul level information. So that's one way you can work with me. And then I also do a group course called Awaken the Priestess Within. It's an 11-week journey. And that course is to help you heal and heal the woman so you can step into your priestess. And the priestess for me is the part of you that's stepping into divine service. So you'll have something to offer to the world, your unique medicine. And so that's a really beautiful journey of healing the parts of your, the people pleaser, the part of you that feels disempowered, healing that aspect so you can really step into being of service and sharing your gifts with the world.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on today, Fiona. It was a beautiful conversation. I love speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I loved the questions you asked. They're brilliant and they really made me think. So thank you so much for inviting me on.
Thank you. Start activating your feminine creative power with my free quiz. Answer a few short questions and receive your creative wellness profile. I'll send you 3 actionable tips to help you activate your feminine creative power. Head to samhorton.co/quiz.